for listening to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast, keeping you up to date with the latest in American soccer. And don't forget to subscribe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Uncle Sam's Soccer Podcast. My name is Jake Petroba, and joining me, as always, is Steven Jodaran and Armand Kafai. If you haven't done so, please go back and listen to yesterday's episode where we speak with Bobby Warshaw of MLSsoccer.com, where we discuss CONCACAF Champions League and why MLS struggles to perform. On this episode, we speak with Ian Thomas of the Business Sports Journal to learn more about MLS's TV rights deal. Follow us on Twitter at UncSamSoccerPod. We always enjoy your feedback and comments, so continue to send them in. Don't forget, you can always find the show on any major podcast platform. Now, let's get to today's episode. Joining us on the show is staff writer for the Sports Business Journal. It's Ian Thomas. You can follow him on Twitter at by Ian Thomas. Ian, how you doing today?
I'm good, guys. How are you?
We're doing great. Ian, let's just, begin really general. TV deals in sports are very significant, but how significant are they to sports leagues?
I mean, it's pretty much the lifeblood for any league, for any professional, even just teams. The revenue that comes via broadcast deals, especially the last sort of round of deals for all leagues, have been pretty much monumental, for lack of a better word, and have, is the reason for salary increases, for teams' revenues being at all-time high, for deals like the Bryce Harper deal to, the contract that Antonio Brown has now. I mean, the backing of all of these deals effectively is the broadcast contracts, and the bulk, the majority, however you want to kind of phrase it, of team revenues coming directly from those sort of deals. Frankly, whatever sport you want to talk about, whether it's the NFL or you're talking $1 billion worth of contracts, media contracts, or, very small leagues where that small amount of incremental revenue is, a real deal breaker, or real big deal, for any league to kind of get off the ground.
Now, you had your report this past week talking about how MLS instructed their teams, hey, don't put your local broadcast deals past 2022. Looks like they want to move towards packaging local broadcast rights with their national deal. Why would MLS decide, hey, that's a good option for us to go with?
Sure. Well, the last MLS TV rights deal was a 3 times increase. The one that has their games on ESPN, Fox, and Univision. That was 3 times more than the previous deal. At the same time, that deal is only about $90 million a year, which is, extremely pales in comparison to any other major professional sport here in the U.S. For owners in MLS right now to justify paying, $150 million in expansion fees plus, stadium costs plus, training facility, development of that, signing, $10-15 million for a designated player on the fee alone, plus the salaries, plus all the other upkeep. They're looking for revenue increases on, what they receive from the league, what that sort of payout is. And, as I'm sure anyone who's a fan of MLS has recognized, they've signed bigger deals with companies like Audi or Kellogg's and Adidas and that sort of thing. The one thing that really hasn't kept pace is the TV broadcast deal. So when that sort of comes up in 2022 from the national point of view, the league really needs to drive a lot of revenue out of that deal, not only to kind of justify might be the wrong way of putting it, but, give owners the sense of this is what we're investing towards, but also fuel the league's future growth. If that deal doubles in size, say, that's, more money that teams are going to have to put into stadiums, to buy players with, to invest in marketing and do all of these things. So the league really wants to put itself in the best position to get the largest deal it possibly can. That obviously still makes sense for growing the game and fans and making sure people can see it. So they really are trying to have what's the most, let's get all of our rights at the table at the same time. all of our national TV rights here in the U.S. and in Canada, all of our TV rights globally, internationally, and all of our TV rights locally as well, and sort of see what comes out of it. Or is that going to, can a big company come in and spend a ton of money and do it? Can they split it up in certain ways? Just kind of have everything, all the cards on the table, and whatever might lead to the biggest deal. So I'd say it's kind of like, they're not really sure how it's going to work out just yet, but that is the thought process.
Ian, you mentioned obviously bundling the local and national rights deals. Do you get the sense that maybe they're trying to do what the NFL has done with their TV rights deal, where it's a national broadcast, but your team will be shown in your market?
I mean, that certainly is a potential option. I mean, I think to probably justify a broadcaster to do something like that, you're going to need TV ratings like the NFL has, where you're going to have millions of folks, effectively tuning in nationally regardless. Obviously, I think we all know MLS is not there yet on the TV side. They have had some growth in recent years, but there's obviously also a concerted effort to make sure those ratings, continue to grow. And so I'd be hard pressed to believe that, that's how it would kind of play out. I do think the league obviously would love, I mean, if an ESPN or a broadcaster came with that idea, I'm sure they wouldn't turn it down. But it would just be a matter of someone seeing the value in that property like that.
Yeah, let me ask you, when it comes to the NFL and MLS, we know there's a lot of link between them, obviously with a couple of owners sharing ownerships of an NFL team and an MLS team, but whatever happens in NFL, does that trickle down to MLS, and can we see more of that happening going forward, especially with the TV deals? I know we kind of drew comparisons to it, but is that a big significant influence in MLS?
Well, I think the fact of the matter is there's probably only 5 or 6 sports leagues that truly matter on TV. The traditional big four in the NFL, MLB, NHL, and NBA. You have MLS kind of as that, other big one here in North America, and obviously now you have Premier League and Liga MX, Liga MX, if you're a Spanish language speaker. I think there's only so many of these deals that are sort of out there. So when it comes to another league sort of looking and saying, what did League X do in their deal to make sure that they got that, 2 or 3 times increase? A lot of people were concerned that some of the NFL deals wouldn't be as robust as they previously were. And the NFL went out and did, its Thursday Night Football deal, or, still in discussions with Amazon. There's some talk now about, changing some of their Sunday afternoon deals. And all of them are pointing to, multiple times increases on top of what are already, like I said, billion-dollar deals. So I think, it would be silly of MLS to not turn around and sort of say, and I know they do this, what really works for these other leagues, and what can we kind of take from that? At the same time, they're far different products. I think, NFL games, you'll never see one that doesn't have, tens of millions of people watching, hypothetically. MLS, it's closer to 300,000 folks.
Mm-hmm.
And I think MLS, being a little bit of a newer property, can kind of probably take things a little bit more of a different approach, whether that's, the NFL just went down that path of streaming with Amazon. MLS could be a little more aggressive on that front, knowing that maybe that's an option for what they view as a younger, more digitally savvy fan base. The idea of the NFL doing a digital deal, solely digital, is probably not possible given kind of, the average age of a fan and how they consume the game. For MLS, maybe that's realistic. So I think they do crib notes. I think, at the end of the day, they're all obviously a little bit unique, and it depends on who they're in discussions with in terms of broadcast partners as well.
How specifically are MLS teams, and they're told, hey, don't extend your deals, but how are those teams reacting basically to the news? I mean, it seems like, there's been a kind of a wave of like some local deals that have actually, been making a little bit more money relative to the past, like DC United's deal with Flow Sports, off the top of my head, is what I can think of. So how are those teams reacting?
Well, I think to your point, some of the deals are improving. I mean, certainly in the case of a Flow Sports or, LAFC deal with YouTube TV, these are starting to, be true revenue producing deals for the teams. But the reality is that for most teams, you're probably talking in terms of, maybe $1 million or $2 or less for a rights fee versus, say, any other pro sports team where you're talking potentially tens of millions of dollars a year. So I think, the teams, their feeling on this is sort of that, something needs to kind of change a little bit. Something needs to be sort of done to make sure these deals, really sort of get the sort of revenue out of them that the teams feel they're worth, but also to help the teams grow in terms of their own bottom line. And, the feeling is, and maybe some of this is helped by the fact that it is a single entity league and the owners have all bought into this strategy, that, the biggest way to grow this pot of broadcast revenue, whether it's local, international, or national, is to put everything together and figure it out from there. So I think more or less the teams have been pretty happy. Like they've been online with this. I guess the question probably is, how do broadcasters maybe feel about this and potentially losing some of those, properties they've developed over the last number of years. But then again, we're still talking about a landscape 3 or so years away. I think it's probably a better question to see how that reaction is on that front, maybe in another year or two when some of these deals are either closer to expiration or are closer to having to be ended as a result.
Ian, when broadcasters look to sign TV deals with leagues, apart from TV ratings, what other factors go into play?
Well, I think ratings, to your point, are a huge one. I think another one is the demographics and who is actually watching these games and what kind of advertisers are looking to sort of meet that audience. For MLS, where you have sort of this younger, more digitally savvy, this millennial, multicultural audience that I think, a lot of advertisers and broadcasters, that's the kind of viewer they're looking to attract. That's the kind of, people that companies are trying to speak to in terms of advertising. That sort of comes into play as well. And, companies, broadcasters are always looking for properties that they feel have some inherent upside. There's only one NFL. NFL only has so many broadcast packages. There's only so many of those Goliath sort of sports properties that you're going to say, all right, we're going to put, the Sunday Night Football game on. It's going to draw X number of viewers every week. There's only a few of those things. So what are some things that we see potential growth on? What are some things that the broadcasters feel that they can play a role in and help develop as well? Which I think that's sort of been the approach for MLS national broadcasters in the past. You see how much work, Fox and ESPN and Univision as well, put into sort of helping MLS grow its property. And it's sort of a mix of all those things, but like you said, ratings is the big deal here. It really matters, how teams are trending or how a property is trending on that front.
Yeah, let me ask you this. How does MLS talk about their TV ratings when they're significantly lower than the Premier League and across the board compared to the top four in America?
Yeah, I mean, that's I guess the tricky part. I mean, I'm sure you guys have discussed before or all know the sort of stats as a result to, this being this wave of soccer fandom in this country, and how more people today are more inclined to watch soccer or be fans of soccer. So I think that kind of always will lead the day. And there are very few soccer properties that are relevant on TV. I mean, Premier League does pretty well. Liga MX, at least in Spanish language, does very well. But outside of that, whether it's because they're on, Spanish League on BN doesn't really have as much, visibility, or Bundesliga on Fox doesn't really get too great of ratings. I mean, there's still a little bit of a disconnect between the amount of soccer fans and folks that tune in. So I think, for MLS, it's the growth story that they want to tell. They're getting into more cities and becoming more popular. And, you see what happened in Atlanta these last 2 years, or even in the final. I mean, those are great stories to sort of tell. And, like I said from earlier about the broadcaster's point of view, they're going to look and sort of say, well, there's 70,000 excited people in Atlanta that are showing up to games. and are going bonkers. Like this could be a scene in London or Manchester or Munich, and no one would, or Madrid, pick a city, and no one would be surprised that this is soccer. But we're talking about Atlanta. How do we translate that, and how do we get folks in the United States to really sort of tune in at that same scale? And it's always going to be a little bit of an uphill battle, but the league's ratings have increased over time. They're doing better, and there's definitely an emphasis to sort of build on that. It'll be tricky if they're going to ask, depending on what they want in that deal. Then again, like I said, there is a scarcity of rights when it comes to sports. So there's the hope that a broadcaster will say, well, there's only one NFL, there's only one MLB, NHL and MLB, NBA. There's only one big other professional sports league in the U.S., and here's the opportunity to kind of be involved with it, and that drive up the price as well.
Ian, there was that report, I believe, last spring of that $4 billion TV rights deal that was offered to MLS with the stipulation of promotion relegation being added to the league. That's not something MLS would consider in a few years here, would it?
Well, two things I guess I'll say about that specifically. It was the league's position at the time, and I presume it would still be the league's position if any sort of deal was approached to them, is that the current broadcasters that they deal with have a little bit of a negotiating window when the contracts expire. So they're not really they don't really have the ability to do effectively, I guess, like a pre-contract signing like this. Secondly, MP Silva was behind that offer more or less, and since that has happened, MP and Silva effectively has liquidated a lot of its broadcasting money. The company itself is kind of insolvent. They haven't paid other debts to other properties in which they hold the rights, kind of raising questions of how realistic was that sort of deal to begin with. I mean, to answer your question more directly, I don't think the league would ever consider a broadcast deal that would force them to do anything as it relates to the on-the-field product or, consider certain things. I don't think they would necessarily consider that. I mean, this is a little hypothetical, but it's hard to say.
With the current rating, everyone talks about, MLS ratings are kind of lagging behind. Do you have, potentially any, what do you think are ways that, MLS can, say, and try to improve? Hey, I'm putting the ball in your court. See if you can.
Well, geez, if that's like a literally $100 million question, because I think that's going to be, what's the negotiation is going to come down to. I mean, what is MLS going to kind of say or present as an idea to kind of grow these ratings to where, this is 400 to 500,000 people are watching weekly, no matter who plays. I mean, currently, they're getting some, sub 200,000 games on FS1 and whatnot, which, says something about, kind of the growth, and it's struggling to a certain degree. I mean, the league has played up rivalries. A lot of those games have gotten good tune-ins. There's some markets that have proven that, folks will tune in and watch those games regardless. It's a very similar thing you see in the NHL, where there's a lot of the same teams play on national television, which does gripe some fans. I mean, if you're a Chicago Blackhawks fan or Washington Capitals or Boston Bruins fan, you'll see your team on national TV a lot. If you are a Dallas Stars fan or Nashville Predators fan, you might be a little bit miffed by the fact that you're not on, but there's research that is backing that sort of thought process. So does that change to the point where you're going to see a lot of Atlanta United games on TV versus, say, I don't want to pick a team out and say they do bad on national TV, but I'm sure you sort of get my gist. I mean, I think the goal is just to grow the league's relevance, get teams to be more relevant in their marketplaces, get teams that are in big cities like Chicago or Philadelphia, or New England area, or even New York here, sort of more relevant. I mean, you can kind of get bigger fandoms in those cities. That's what's going to kind of lead more folks to sort of tune in. But I don't think there's any one magic sort of bullet that's going to all of a sudden have a ton of people sort of tune in.
Well, Ian, we really appreciate the time. We do have a shameless plug here on the show, so please go ahead and just once again plug where we can find your work or anything else that you contribute to.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, guys. Like I said, I'm with Sports Business Journal, Sports Business Daily. You can sort of check out everything I post on Twitter. I try to share as much as I can at by Ian Thomas. Anything that folks are interested in related to the business of soccer, I'm happy to cover. So always happy to chat, and I appreciate you guys having me on.
I appreciate it.
Thanks again to Ian Thomas for joining us. A lot of good information there. I feel like I try to learn something new with these interviews we do, but I feel like I learned a lot with that last interview. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I just don't know how MLS is going to get a bigger TV deal when their TV ratings continue just to suck.
Yeah, it's kind of tough when your games on FS1 like Chicago and like the Galaxy I don't think they eclipsed 200,000. I could be wrong, but if they did, it was barely. And that's
when?
For last week's match.
They had more than that.
I don't know. I don't think it eclipsed. It wasn't a record breaker. It wasn't 300,000 for a MLS opening night.
Look, guys. I know the narrative last week was MLS ratings are down, but let's look at last year's overall numbers. The 2018 viewership numbers across the board. Viewership was up 6% last year, reaching 26 million viewers across all networks. Univision, which I believe was down 24% last week.
Yikes.
Saw a 14% growth in viewers in 2018, and it was the most watched MLS season on the network, averaging 287,000 fans. Now, look, those aren't huge numbers, 287,000 in the grand scheme of things when you're comparing it to the NFL or the NBA or even Major League Baseball. But the trends over the last couple of years show there has been growth in TV viewership.
Yeah, there has, but it's a very slow and steady growth, right? It's not. I think all of us expect at some point MLS to overtake one of the big four teams. I think it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Guys, sorry to interrupt, Armand.
Yeah.
But you are right, actually. I'm looking at WorldSoccerTalk.com. They have listed out all the games. Under 200,000 for LA Galaxy Chicago Fire. And
it was under 200,000. Yeah.
And Sounders Cincinnati was also under 200,000. But ESPN, DC United, Atlanta United, just under 400,000. And LAFC Sporting KC, 361,000.
I mean, those are also better games, too.
Right, but let's throw this out there. ESPN, do they put a better MLS package together than FS1?
I'm thinking about that, but I would almost... Jake, you take this one. Let me give me some more time to think about it. But because I want to say no, but
it's tough to say. I mean, when you're talking about MLS package, you're just talking about the game, the broadcast of the game, or are we talking about what else comes with ESPN? If you have the ESPN Plus subscription.
No, I'm talking about their broadcast of MLS.
Well, I mean, I guess it's your preference. I mean, if you want to listen to John Champion and Taylor Twellman talk, yeah, you probably would lean MLS. Or if you want to listen to Stu Holden and John Strong, to be honest with you, it's a coin flip. I think they both do a solid job. I think it's a
wash. It's a
and
wash.
One thing I prefer out of ESPN, which I know FS1 does this occasionally, is there's no pre-match show. There's nothing to get you ready for the game. And I know FS1 will occasionally do a pre-match show. ESPN, when you're watching it, it's like, all right, we're gonna leave Eastern Carolina University versus Charleston College, the college basketball game, and you're going to get DC United and Atlanta. It's like you just jump right into it. I don't know. There's nothing. I wish it was bookend a little bit with like a pre and post game show.
Yeah. I agree. And also the treatment of MLS Cup with Fox compared to ESPN is like that's one thing that kind of factored into it feels like a big deal when it's on Fox. Fan feels like, oh, it should be on ESPN too. It's not like it doesn't feel like a marquee event. Like at least maybe it'll change this year, but I mean overall, it just didn't feel like a marquee. Oh wow, this is like it just wasn't feeling like that. I do believe the quality of ESPN's broadcast has actually gone up this year. I think they've actually it looks a lot better than what it has been. And FS1 to me has always been good, but I mean, like a point I try making on the show at least like once every 2 months. Aesthetically, MLS is not pleasing on the eyes compared to like leagues like the Premier League.
Well, here's the other thing though. If ESPN were to treat MLS like it was a big deal, and by that I mean if they were actually giving MLS time on SportsCenter every night or a couple times a week and talking about MLS instead of it's just this sport we have on, just like we have cornhole on, random times in the afternoon. I mean that's what ESPN it feels like they treat it as, and if they were to talk about MLS matches on SportsCenter and make it feel more important, I think you would see a direct increase in viewership.
Yeah, but it's not ESPN's responsibility to hype up MLS when it should be MLS's job. I get it. ESPN's the network.
But it is ESPN's job to hype up MLS because they are paying to broadcast the matches. So They should be hyping it up because they are the ones who are investing money.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, ESPN could just cut bait and be like, all right, MLS, you're on your own. Go find somewhere else.
And they very well could. Like I said, MLS to ESPN, it feels like ESPN treats MLS like it's the cornhole championships or whatever Overwatch video game stream or whatever stupid thing they air on ESPN2. That's what MLS feels like.
It'll be something to pay attention to is how MLS will deal.
Steven.
What?
I just want to point out, looking at we're recording this Sunday, 9:00 ESPN2 tonight, the World Axe Throwing League. That's what MLS feels like to me.
World Axe Throwing? Nice. I kind of want to watch it now.
Axe Throwing League, 9:00.
I'm actually curious now. Well, they'll have now 3 more viewers tonight after us 3 will watch.
Maybe.
We are your official World Axe Throwing podcast, by the way.
Yeah, the official podcast of the World Axe Throwing League.
There you go. Listeners, if you haven't had the chance, go back to yesterday's episode. We spoke with Bobby Warshaw talking about why teams are trash in CONCACAF Champions League. You follow Armand Kafai and his coverage of FC Dallas at Armand Kafai. Follow Jake Watroba at Jake Watroba. You can follow yours truly at Steven Jodarant. And yeah, we'll be back tomorrow.